I walked into the courthouse with my newborn son sleeping against my chest, and my husband's lawyer smiled like he had already buried me. The smile was small, clean, and cruel. It was the kind of smile a man wears when he believes the truth is only useful if he owns it. My husband, Evan Reed, sat at the front table in a navy suit I had pressed for him 100 times. His hair was perfect. His jaw was freshly shaved. His wedding ring was gone. Beside him sat his mother, Claudia Reed, wrapped in pearls and cold perfume. On Evan's other side sat Vanessa Bell, the woman he planned to marry as soon as he finished destroying me. Vanessa was wearing my wedding bracelet, turning it under the courtroom lights as if she wanted me to see it. I did. Then I looked away, because my son was warm against my chest, and he mattered more than all of them. He was 6 days old. His little mouth was open. His fist rested against my collarbone like he was holding on to me as much as I was holding on to him. Behind me, the courtroom doors closed with a heavy wooden sound. I remember thinking it sounded like a coffin lid. Evan leaned toward his lawyer, Marcus Vale, and whispered something. Marcus chuckled. I heard him anyway. She brought the baby for sympathy? Evan smirked. And for 1 second, I saw the man I had married and the monster he had become sitting in the same chair. The judge entered. Everyone stood. I rose slowly because my body still hurt from giving birth. 6 days earlier, I had been in a hospital bed with stitches, shaking hands, and no husband beside me. Evan had refused to come unless I signed a custody agreement first. Temporary care, his lawyer called it. Just until I became emotionally stable, Evan said. But the paper did not say temporary care. It said I would hand over physical custody of my son immediately after birth. It said Evan would decide where the baby lived. It said I would have visits only if approved by a doctor chosen by the Reed family. It said I would disappear from my own child's life before I even got to learn the shape of his fingers. When I refused to sign, Evan sent Marcus to my recovery room. I was still hooked to an IV. My son was sleeping in the clear bassinet beside me. A nurse had just helped me sit up because I was dizzy. Marcus walked in wearing a gray coat and that same clean smile. Lily, he said, like we were old friends. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. I told him to leave. He placed the papers beside my bed. Judges don't like unstable women, he said. Especially unstable women with no job, no house, no money, and a history of panic attacks. My history of panic attacks was 2 therapy appointments after Evan shoved me into a pantry door and told the doctor I had slipped. He answered every question before I could open my mouth. Later in the car, he said, "See, now there's a record." That was how Evan worked. He did not just hurt you. He prepared the paperwork to explain why the hurt was your fault. Now he had dragged me into court for an emergency custody hearing. He accused me of kidnapping my own baby from the hospital. He accused me of inventing abuse. He said I was using our son to demand money from the Reed family. His petition said I was mentally unstable. His petition said I had no safe home. His petition said he had reason to doubt the baby was his. That last lie was the ugliest one, because Evan knew exactly whose child I was holding. The judge sat down and looked over his glasses. "Mrs. Reed," he said, "do you have counsel present today?" Marcus smiled wider. Evan lowered his head, hiding another laugh. "No, Your Honor," I said. "Not today." Claudia gave a soft little sigh, the kind she used at charity dinners when someone broke a rule she had invented. The judge frowned. "You understand this is an emergency custody matter?" "Yes, Your Honor. And you are prepared to proceed without an attorney." I shifted my baby carefully, slid one hand into my tote bag, and felt the edge of the folder. The red folder? Thick, heavy. Organized by date, yellow tabs for medical records, blue tabs for messages, black tabs for money, white tabs for court filings, and one sealed envelope in the back that Evan did not know existed. I had built that folder while he thought I was broken. I built it at 2 a.m. while I was 8 months pregnant and afraid to sleep. I built it on my phone in bathrooms, in parked cars, and in the hospital while contractions rolled through me like waves. I built it because before I became Mrs. Evan Reed, before Claudia taught her friends to call me the charity girl, I had been Lily Monroe, senior forensic accountant for the state attorney's office. I knew how rich men hid money. I knew how powerful men hid violence. And I knew the difference between a mistake and a pattern. Marcus saw the folder when I pulled it from my bag. He tilted his head. "A plea for mercy?" he asked. His voice was low, but the courtroom was quiet enough for everyone to hear. I walked to the bench with my baby against my chest. Every step hurt. My stitches pulled. My back ached. My shoulder burned under my cream cardigan where the bruise was still turning from purple to yellow. But my voice did not shake. I set the folder in front of the judge. Then I looked at Evan. For the first time that morning, his smirk faded. "Your Honor," I said, "this baby is not the reason I'm asking for protection. He is the proof." Evan's face drained of color, and that was when the courtroom finally became quiet enough for the truth to speak. For the first time since I had known him, Evan Reed stopped acting. It lasted only a second, one small second. But I saw it. His eyes flicked from me to the folder, then to Marcus, then to his mother. Claudia's hand tightened around her purse. Vanessa's lips parted. Marcus stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. Your Honor, Marcus said, this is theater. My client is a respected real estate developer. Mrs. Reed is upset because the marriage is ending, and she is attempting to use an infant to gain leverage. The judge did not look up. He opened the folder. That sound, paper sliding against paper, felt louder than thunder. The first page was simple. A certified paternity test. Ivan had told the court there was reason to question whether my son was his. The test said otherwise. So did the hospital visitor log from the night Evan came to my room under a false name because he did not want Vanessa to know. He stood beside my hospital bed while our son slept and whispered, "You should have signed before he was born. Now this is going to get ugly." Then the next morning, his lawyer filed a petition saying Evan doubted paternity. The judge read quietly. Marcus cleared his throat. Paternity is not the central issue, Your Honor. The central issue is Mrs. Reed's mental state and her ability to provide care. I waited. One thing my old job taught me was patience. People who expect you to become emotional. They want you to cry, yell, interrupt, and look exactly as unstable as they claim you are. So I did not give them that. I breathed in the smell of my son's baby shampoo. I breathed out slowly. The judge turned to the yellow tabs, medical records, 3 emergency visits, 2 urgent care reports, 1 fractured wrist, 1 shoulder injury, a bruise across my ribs shaped like the edge of a countertop. Every report used careful language. Patient reports fall. Patient anxious. Husband answers most questions. Patient advised to follow up. The reports alone did not prove what Evan had done. I knew that. Marcus knew that too. He stepped forward immediately. Your Honor, medical records do not prove causation. A fall is a fall. My client cannot be blamed for every accident his wife had during an emotionally difficult pregnancy. No, I said softly. Medical records do not prove causation. Marcus looked pleased. Then I added, but photographs help? The judge lifted the next page. The photographs were not pretty. I had printed them because phones disappear. Cloud accounts get hacked. Passwords get changed. But paper, certified and dated, can sit on a judge's desk and refuse to vanish. There were pictures of my shoulder, my wrist, my ribs, and the bruise behind my ear after Evan pulled me away from the front door. A nurse named Jenna had taken some of those photos. She closed the curtain, handed me a card, and whispered, "Put this somewhere he won't look." The card was for the Harrington Family Justice Center. I hid it inside my winter coat. That card saved my life. The judge kept reading. Evan's foot began tapping under the table. Tap, tap, tap. I knew that rhythm. That was the sound he made before he lost control. Marcus leaned toward him and whispered, "Stay calm." I almost smiled. Stay calm. That was what everyone had always told me. Stay calm when he calls you crazy. Stay calm when he blocks the door. Stay calm when his mother says good wives do not embarrass good families. Stay calm when his new girlfriend wears your bracelet in court. So I stayed calm, and I let the folder do what my voice had never been allowed to do. The judge turned to the blue tabs. Text messages, emails, voicemails, screenshots with metadata, transcripts authenticated by a forensic lab. Marcus saw the lab letterhead and stiffened. I knew why. It was the same forensic lab his own firm used in corporate fraud cases. The clerk played the first audio file. Evan's voice filled the courtroom. "Sign the custody transfer before the birth, Lily, or I'll make sure the court thinks you're insane. I own the people who decide what mothers deserve." A murmur moved through the room. Vanessa turned sharply toward Evan. Claudia whispered, "Don't react." Evan slammed his palm onto the table. "That's edited." My baby startled. I placed one hand on his back and rocked him gently. The judge's eyes lifted. "Mr. Reed," he said, "you will not strike the table again." Evan's jaw flexed. Marcus recovered fast. "We challenge the authenticity of that audio." "It was authenticated," I said. "By whom?" Marcus asked. I looked at him. "By Northbridge Digital Forensics." The room changed again, not loudly, not dramatically, but it changed. Marcus's mouth closed. Evan stopped tapping his foot. Claudia's eyes narrowed, not at me, but at her son. Because that was the first moment they understood something important. I had not come with feelings. I had come with evidence. Before Evan, I believed evidence was clean. Numbers either added up or they did not. Dates matched or they did not. A signature was real or forged. A transfer was legitimate or it was theft. Then I married into the Reed family and learned that evidence can sit in plain sight while everyone pretends not to see it. The first time Evan scared me, we were in our kitchen. I had asked why he withdrew $20,000 from our joint account without telling me. He laughed and said, "Our account. That's adorable." When I told him my name was on it too, his face changed. He stepped close and said, "You are my wife." Not my auditor. That night he apologized with flowers. The next week he changed the banking password. Soon after, Claudia told me, "A wise wife makes home peaceful." Peaceful meant silent. Silent meant safe. At least, that was what I told myself. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought maybe fatherhood would soften him. I know women watching from the outside often ask, "Why did she stay?" I used to wonder that too. Then I learned that leaving is not one decision. It is 1,000 small doors, and behind each door is a threat. Where will I sleep? Will he find me? Will he take the baby? Will anyone believe me? Evan understood those doors. That was why he locked them one by one. He sold my car and said we needed to simplify. He told my former coworkers I was focusing on family. He told our doctor I was paranoid. He told Claudia I was ungrateful. He told Vanessa I was already gone. But he made one mistake. He thought fear had erased my training. It had not. Fear sharpened it. The first black tab in the folder held bank records from 3 shell companies: Ashford Lane Holdings, Bright Harbor Development, Graymere Consulting. On paper, they looked separate. In reality, they were Evan wearing 3 different masks. After I told him I was pregnant, he moved marital assets into those companies. Then he used my forged signature to make it look like I had approved the transfers. He probably thought I would never check. But at 3 a.m, while he slept downstairs because he said my pregnancy breathing annoyed him, I sat in the nursery and pulled documents from every account I could still legally access. I followed the money. Money tells the truth when people do not. $35,000 to a private investigator. $5,000 to a reputation management firm. $50,000 to a clinic administrator 2 days before a psychiatric summary appeared in Marcus's custody filing. That summary claimed I suffered from delusions, emotional instability, and an unhealthy fixation on my unborn child. It was signed by a doctor I had never met, a doctor who, according to the state licensing board, had been suspended 8 months earlier. The judge reached that section and paused. His jaw tightened. Marcus saw it. "Your Honor," he said quickly, "financial matters are outside the scope of this emergency hearing. Not if they relate to alleged fraud used to influence custody," the judge said. Marcus had no answer. Evan did. He stood so fast his chair slammed into the railing behind him. "You little snake." The words came out low, almost a hiss. My son stirred. I kissed the top of his head. The bailiff moved one step closer to Evan. The judge brought the gavel down hard. "Set down, Mr. Reed." Evan remained standing for half a second too long. That half second told the room more than any speech could. Then he sat. His mother leaned in and whispered something I could not hear. But I saw his answer. He shook his head once, sharp and angry. That was when I knew Claudia did not know everything. She knew the plan. She knew about the trust. She knew they needed my baby. But she did not know how many laws Evan had broken trying to get him. And Vanessa knew even less. She sat frozen, my bracelet loose on her wrist, staring at the folder like it had become a live animal. Marcus tried to regain control. "Mrs. Reed," he said, "you are not an attorney. You are making serious accusations without proper foundation." I turned to him. "No, Mr. Vale, I am a mother. But before that, I was an investigator, and before that, I was a woman who learned to keep copies." Then I handed the judge the white tabs. Those were for Marcus. Marcus Vale had built his career on polished language. He could make a threat sound like advice and coercion sound like concern. But neat lies still leave fingerprints. The white tabs showed every filing Marcus made in the week before my son was born. He said Evan and I had been separated for almost a year. False. He said I had no stable address. False. He said I refused prenatal care. False. He said a psychiatric provider questioned my ability to bond with the baby. False. But my favorite page was not a filing, it was an email. Marcus had sent it to Evan at 11:42 p.m. on a Thursday night. The subject line was simple: Lily package. The body said, "Once we have the clinic letter, the judge will focus on instability instead of money. Push signature before delivery if possible. After delivery, sympathy may become a problem. A sympathy may become a problem." That was what they called a mother holding her newborn. A problem. Marcus looked at the page and went still. For the first time, his face lost that lawyer shine. "Privileged communication," he said. The judge looked up slowly. "Are you asserting privilege over an email discussing a possibly fraudulent medical letter submitted to this court?" Marcus swallowed. The silence that followed was beautiful. It was not loud revenge. It was not screaming. It was a door closing softly behind a man who had locked too many doors for other people. I had not stolen that email. Vanessa had sent it to me. Not on purpose. That part still amazed me. 2 weeks before I gave birth, Vanessa texted me a photo of my bracelet on her wrist. Then she wrote, "He chose me. Stop embarrassing yourself." I did not answer. A minute later, she sent another photo, trying to show off a diamond ring beside champagne. But Evan's open laptop was in the background, and one subject line was clear enough to enlarge. Lily package. That was all I needed. I did not hack anything. I did not break into anything. I simply took the careless cruelty they threw at me and zoomed in. From there, the pieces came together. A subpoena was not available to me yet, but a police report for identity theft was. So was a complaint to the clinic, a request for my own medical file, and my legal right to access joint accounts bearing my name. Vanessa kept sending insults. A nursery photo. Claudia holding tiny blue shoes. A screenshot of a calendar invitation titled Custody Celebration. Every message was meant to hurt me. Every message helped me. I printed all of them. I saved metadata. I backed up copies to 3 places. Then I waited until they put their lies in front of a judge. Because lies said at home are abuse. Lies filed in court are evidence. The judge read the Vanessa messages next. Vanessa looked sick. "I didn't know," she whispered. Claudia snapped, "Be quiet." But Vanessa was looking at my son, finally understanding he was not an accessory in her new life. He was a baby they had planned to take from his mother. Marcus tried again. Your Honor, I must object to this entire presentation. Reed is turning an emergency custody hearing into a character assassination? No, I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried. They turned my pregnancy into a business transaction. I am showing the receipt. The judge turned one more page. This was the page I had saved for last. A printed message from Claudia to Evan. Get the baby first. Once Lily is declared unstable, the trust unlocks and she gets nothing. For several seconds, no one spoke. Even the bailiff looked down at the page. The Reed family trust had been created by Evan's grandfather, a man who made his money building half of 3 counties and controlling the other half. The trust had conditions. Most of them were private. One of them said Evan would receive controlling shares in Reed Development only after he had legal custody of a biological child. Not after marriage, not after love, custody. A biological child. My son had never been a grandson to Claudia. He had never been a son to Evan. He had been a key. The judge leaned back, his eyes moved from Claudia to Evan. Mrs. Reed, he said, how did you obtain this trust information? I reached into the back pocket of the red folder and removed the sealed envelope. My father-in-law gave it to me. That made Claudia stand. For the first time, her perfect mask shattered. That is impossible, she said. The judge's eyes narrowed. Ms. Reed, sit down. Claudia did not. My husband is dead, yes, I said. Robert Reed died 2 years ago. But before he died, he sent a letter to his attorney. The attorney was instructed to give it to me if Evan ever tried to remove a child from my custody. Claudia stared at me. Evan stared at his mother. Vanessa covered her mouth. The judge opened the envelope. Inside was a notarized statement from Robert Reed. I had met Robert only a handful of times before his stroke. He was not a warm man, but he saw more than people thought. In the letter, he wrote that he feared his wife and son might use the trust language to manipulate a future child's custody. He wrote that the clause had originally been created to prevent Evan from selling his shares while living recklessly overseas, not to reward him for taking a baby from its mother. Then came the sentence that changed everything. If Evan Reed or Claudia Reed attempts to use this trust to coerce, defraud, or endanger the mother of Evan's biological child, I instruct the trustees to suspend all distributions pending review. Claudia whispered, Robert, you fool. The judge heard her. So did everyone else. And Evan, who had spent years believing he was the smartest person in every room, finally turned on the one person who had taught him how to be cruel. You said the trustees would never know, he snapped. Marcus closed his eyes. It was the closest thing to a confession we had heard all morning. After that, the hearing moved fast. Truth can crawl for years. But once it reaches the right room, it can run. The judge ordered a short recess so copies could be made for the court record. I sat on a wooden bench in the hallway with my son sleeping in my arms. For the first time all morning, my hands started shaking. Not because I was afraid, because my body finally understood I had survived long enough to speak. Marisol, the advocate from the Family Justice Center, sat beside me. She did not ask if I was okay. People ask that when they want an answer that makes them comfortable. Marisol only opened a bottle of water and placed it beside me. You did well, she said. I looked down at my son. His eyelashes rested on his cheeks like little commas. I don't feel strong, I whispered. You don't have to feel strong to be strong, she said. Across the hall, Evan argued with Marcus in a low, furious voice. Claudia was already on the phone, trying to reach anyone who still believed the Reed name could bend steel. Vanessa stood alone by the vending machines. My bracelet was no longer on her wrist. She held it like it had burned her. After a moment, she walked toward me. Marisol shifted slightly ready. Vanessa stopped a few feet away. Her makeup had cracked under her eyes. I didn't know about the trust, she said. I said nothing. I didn't know about the baby. Still, I said nothing. She looked down at the bracelet. He told me you abandoned him. He told me you were unstable. He told me the baby might belong to someone else. I finally looked at her. And you believed him because it made you feel chosen. Her face crumpled. That was not forgiveness. It was only truth. She held out the bracelet. I did not take it. Give it to the prosecutor, I said. Her eyes widened. I was purchased with marital funds after Evan claimed he had no access to money, I said. It may matter. Vanessa looked at the bracelet, then at me, and for the first time, I saw something like respect mixed with fear. You really did keep everything? She whispered. No, I said. I kept enough. When court resumed, Vanessa asked to speak to the prosecutor. Claudia tried to stop her. Vanessa pulled away. No, she said loudly. I am not going to prison for your family. That was the second crack in the Reed wall. The third came from Evan himself. Marcus argued that even if the judge had concerns, temporary custody should go to Evan because I had no income and no permanent residence. I turned to another tab. That is false. I handed over my lease. It was for a small apartment under a confidentiality program connected to the Justice Center. I handed over my employment contract. 2 weeks before giving birth, I had accepted a position as a senior financial investigator with the Harrington Family Justice Center. It paid less than my old job. It mattered more. I handed over an affidavit from Marisol confirming I had a safety plan, childcare support, and emergency housing if needed. The judge read each page. Evan stared at me as if I had become someone he did not recognize. "You had a job?" he whispered. "I had a plan," I said. He laughed once, sharp and ugly. "You think this makes you safe?" The bailiff moved again. The judge's face hardened. "Mr. Reed, you are very close to being removed from my courtroom." Evan leaned back, but his eyes stayed on me. I knew that look. It said, "This is not over." And he was right. It was not over. But it was no longer happening in the dark. The judge issued the protective order before lunch. Sold temporary custody to me. No unsupervised contact for Evan. No access to my address. Supervised visitation only after a risk assessment. The custody agreement Marcus pushed into my hospital room was declared invalid pending further review. Then the judge referred the forged medical summary, threats, identity theft report, asset transfers, and possible witness intimidation to prosecutors. Marcus asked for time to respond. The judge looked at him for a long moment. "You will have time, Mr. Vale. I suspect several agencies will want your response." Marcus turned red. Evan stood when the deputies approached him. For one wild second, I thought he would run. Instead, he lunged toward me. "Lily," he said, his voice suddenly soft, almost pleading. "Tell them this is a misunderstanding." That was the voice he used after every injury, after the pantry door, after the wrist, after the night I locked myself in the bathroom while he apologized through the wood. "Baby, it was a misunderstanding. Don't ruin our life over one bad night. This time, there were deputies between us. This time, there was a judge watching. This time, my son was in my arms and my voice was clear. No, Evan." I said, "A misunderstanding is forgetting a birthday. This was a campaign." Claudia made a sound like something had torn inside her. "You destroyed my family," she shouted. I looked at her. "No," I said. "I documented what your family did." The deputies escorted Evan out. Marcus gathered his papers with trembling hands. Vanessa handed her phone to the prosecutor, and I walked out of that courtroom with my baby still sleeping against my heart. Outside, the sky was bright and cold. For months, I had imagined freedom would feel like joy. It did not. Not at first. It felt like walking after a car crash. Everything hurt. Everything shook. But I was moving, and I was carrying the only future that mattered. People think revenge is one big courtroom gasp. But real revenge, the kind that heals instead of poisons you, is quieter than that. It is waking up and not checking the hallway for footsteps. It is buying groceries with money no one can monitor. It is hearing your baby cry at 2 a.m. and feeling tired, not terrified. 3 months after the hearing, Evan was indicted for witness intimidation, fraud, identity theft, and violating the protective order. That last charge came after he sent 2 men to sit in a black SUV outside my apartment. He thought I would panic. Instead, I took photos from behind the blinds, called my case officer, and sent the license plate to a detective. One of the men talked. Men like Evan believe loyalty is something money can buy. They forget fear is cheaper. Marcus resigned from his firm while the bar investigated him. Claudia lost control of the trust after the trustees froze distributions. The calls stopped. The invitations stopped. The people who once kissed her cheek at charity dinners suddenly forgot her name. 6 months after the hearing, my son laughed for the first time. A real laugh. A bright, a bubbling sound that filled my tiny apartment and knocked the breath out of me. I had been making silly faces while folding laundry. He kicked his feet, looked at me, and laughed like the world had only ever been safe. I sat there with a towel in my hands and cried. That sound became my new definition of wealth, not the Reed estate with iron gates, not the marble kitchen where Claudia corrected how I held a teacup, not the boardroom where Evan smiled for investors while I hid bruises under my sleeves. Wealth was sunlight on a secondhand rug, formula coupons on the fridge, a lock only I controlled. And my son laughing, without knowing anyone had once tried to turn him into a bargaining chip. I returned to work at the Harrington Family Justice Center. Women came to me holding folders, phones, children, and secrets. Most of them said, "I don't know if this matters." A bank transfer, a threatening text, a doctor's note, a custody paper signed under pressure. I always told them, it matters, maybe not alone. But patterns are built one piece at a time. Then I helped them build. I taught them how to save dates, print records, keep copies somewhere safe, and recognize the difference between a bad apology and a threat-wearing perfume. I never told them leaving was easy. I told them leaving was possible. Evan's criminal case took almost a year. His lawyers called me bitter. They called me calculating. They said I used my professional skills to destroy my husband. When I took the stand, the prosecutor asked how I responded. I looked at the jury. Then I looked at Evan. His suit hung loose, but his eyes were the same. Still angry. Still entitled, I said. I did use my skills. I used them to survive. The courtroom went silent. The prosecutor asked, "Did you want revenge?" People like clean victims. They like women who say they only wanted peace and safety. And I did want those things. But I also wanted Evan to face one room where his name could not save him. So I told the truth. "Yes," I said. "At first, I wanted revenge. Then I realized the best revenge was making sure he could never use the same lies on us again. Evan looked away first. The jury convicted him on the major counts, not all of them. Life is not a movie with perfect punishment, but enough to protect us, expose him, and make the Reed name sound different when people said it. At sentencing, Claudia sat 2 rows behind him. No pearls. No perfect posture. Just a woman staring at the son she had built and the ruin she could no longer decorate. I told the judge about the hospital room, the papers beside my IV, the fake medical letter, and the nights I whispered to my unborn child that I was sorry. Then I said, he wanted the court to see me as unstable because I was scared. But fear is not proof that a woman is weak. Sometimes fear is proof that she has been paying attention. Evan stared at the table. The judge sentenced him to prison time, probation after release, restitution, and no contact with me or my son. Family court later made my custody permanent. The trust remained frozen, then restructured. One portion was placed in an education account for my son, controlled by independent trustees until he became an adult. Claudia fought it. She lost. The day the final custody order arrived, I did not celebrate with champagne. I made grilled cheese. I sat on the kitchen floor while my son played with a plastic measuring cup. The order lay on the table above us. Permanent sole custody. Protected address, no contact. Safe. Such a small word for such a hard one thing. That night, after I put my son to bed, I took the red folder from the locked cabinet. It was worn now. The corners were soft. Some pages were wrinkled. A few tabs had my handwriting from nights when I was so tired the letters slanted across the page. That folder had been my shield, my witness, my map out of hell. But I realized I did not need to live beside my pain in order to honor the woman who collected the proof. So I removed 3 things. The final custody order, Robert Reed's letter, and the first picture ever taken of my son, still red-faced and furious at the world, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Everything else went into a storage box for my attorney. Then I locked the cabinet and turned off the light. My son woke just before dawn. I found him standing in his crib, gripping the rail with both hands, smiling like he had been waiting for me. I lifted him into my arms. He patted my cheek with one soft hand and said, not clearly but close enough, "Mama." One tiny word broke me open and put me back together. I carried him to the window. The city was waking up below us. Ordinary life moved on, unaware that in one small apartment, a woman had just been given the whole world. I thought about the courtroom. I thought about Evan's white face when I said my baby was the proof. Back then, I meant proof of his lies, proof of his plan, proof of every ugly thing he tried to bury. But holding my son in that morning light, I understood something deeper. My baby was also proof of me. Proof that I could be terrified and still think. Proof that I could be hurt and still protect. Proof that I could lose a house, a marriage, a name, and still build a life no one could steal. Years from now, my son may ask about his father. I will not tell him fairy tales. I will not poison him either. I will tell him that some people confuse control with love. I will tell him that his life began in a storm, but he was never the storm. He was the reason I walked out of it. That morning, I pressed my forehead to his and whispered the promise I had been making since the day he was born. You are safe. You are loved, and no one gets to use you as a key again. He laughed. Sunlight filled the room. Evan had tried to turn my son into leverage. Instead, my son became the proof that I was strong enough to save us both, and the red folder that was supposed to beg for mercy became the weapon that set us free.